There's been a lot of chatter across college football recently about rivalries. It is your final scheduled meeting as of right now for the USC Trojans and Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And there's a rivalry a little bit closer to home that is also entering its scheduled final year, that being the beloved Civil War between the Oregon Ducks and the Oregon State Beavers. Now, I'm going to bring in a special guest right now, former Duck himself, George Wrighster, host of the Unafraid Show and former Duck tight end. And George, here's kind of where I want to go with this to really start off. You on your show, you've been talking a lot, and a lot of people have been talking about this USC Notre Dame, why exactly it's happening, why it might not kind of go on in the future. And then now the Ducks and the Beavers. That is a game that has been going on forever. Of course, you played in that football game. My question to you to kind of kick this thing off here right now, should Oregon be open to adjusting their schedule? Should they be open to fighting for the Civil War games in a day and age where a lot of rivalries are starting to kind of go by the wayside?
100% yes. Yes. Because this is a game that matters to people within the state.
Yep.
It doesn't have the same national relevance as it did, but it matters to people that are local. And in college football, in a day and age that we have let the money drive so many important decisions. We've broken up conferences. We've done, the unthinkable geographically, having Stanford and Cal in the Atlantic Coast Conference, where every single team, except for now SMU, who they added, and the two California schools, their states literally touch the ocean, the Atlantic coast. So to have something completely opposite is gross. And it's important to keep some level of regionality and historic things in college football, because that's where the passion and the pageantry lies. I do think, though, that we need yes, money does matter in life.
Yep.
It does. It matters where you live. It matters if you can pay your bills. It matters where you can send your kids to school. It matters where you can eat. It matters a lot of ways. But we can't sell your soul in the process and the pursuit of money.
You sat down recently with Rob Mullens in your trip out to Eugene. Some interviews that are on the Unafraid Show's YouTube channel. If you want to go and check those out, he talked about non-conference scheduling. Did not mention Oregon State. Mentioned a regional FCS team they want to play, or a regional G5 team they want to play, and a Power 4 team that they want to play. Where do you think that this administration stands? We talked about kind of where you sit and where I think I'm in the same boat as say, hey, we want to keep that Civil War game and that Oregon State team alive. But where do you think the administration really sits as pertains to the future of this game and really the future of non-conference scheduling?
Oh, man, this is a case of, I do believe that G5 game is going to be penciled in as Oregon State.
Okay.
And that's really where it should be. And honestly, that part is sad because it's not a Power 4 game anymore. They can't recruit at the same level. It's the money's not the same. It's not as competitive as it once was. So it's almost like that the Oregon State game turns into a bye game now, which is, and for anybody who doesn't understand their schedule, any Power 4 game is going to be a normal just revenue, however they would normally do it. But when you play FCS opponents or G5 opponents, well, G6 now really with the Pac-12, those games you actually have to pay the opponent to play you. So if you're Oregon, you may say, we're not really going out to Corvallis no more.
Right.
But we will pay you to do so. So I do think that, or we may only go out there once every 3 years instead of every other year. I do think that when you do have some leverage, you can take that. And for Oregon, another home game means more money and more revenue. So it's essentially, do you want to do Oregon State a solid, or do you want to just pay them and say, we'll pay you essentially what you might make in a game at home, and then you come play in UG?
Yeah, I think as fans, like we talked about before, I think as college football fans, you want to keep these rivalries together. But now, when you kind of break it down, when you talk about this money, they've got Utah State coming up on the schedule and some other Mountain West teams. I think Boise State is on there once again on the schedule as well. But going on the road as a power 2 team where Oregon sits right now, going on the road to a G6 opponent, that's not necessarily something you're going to see all the time. And that's, of course, what you would see if you have this alternating game between the Beavers and the Ducks. There is floating out there, and we've heard this kind of talked about, a potential Big Ten SEC scheduling arrangement right now. It's a possibility. We talked about the structure of how Oregon wants the schedule. We know, like you said, hey, Oregon State seems to fit perfectly within that G6 model right now, but how do you think a Big Ten let me put it this way. What excites you or concerns you of what a Big Ten and an SEC scheduling arrangement could? What excites you and what concerns you about that possibility?
Number one, all of this advanced schedule is actually, I'll start with the first part. Yes, a Big Ten SEC scheduling arrangement is enticing. It's exciting. You'll get a lot of big games out of that. The other part about it is, Ted, at no point in time should games be scheduled 5, 10, 7, 8, 9 years in advance. They should be scheduled literally. Like, you may know no more than a year in advance. And in the NFL, you literally know who you are playing. You just don't know when you're playing them.
Right. Yep.
And then there's a schedule release. The Big Ten does a schedule release. Yep. The ACC, Big 12, Big 10, all of them do schedule releases. But instead of crafting schedules, these conferences are manipulating schedules. And these schools manipulating schedules because they understand what the principle is. Let me break down the math for you, Ted. The SEC only plays 8 conference games.
Yep.
That is a total of an average of 4 losses per team throughout the entire conference. Mm-hmm. 4 losses.
Yep.
The Big Ten plays 9 conference games, which is an average of 4.5 losses per team. So that means that those losses, that extra half loss of games, that's what 9 more losses have to get spread around different teams. And so the SEC, when those teams play November cupcakes or another non-competitive non-conference game, it allows them to be artificially pushed up the rankings while other teams are playing conference games or tougher non-conference games. So it's a manipulation of the rankings. That's the issue with it. And so you have the SEC who refuses to play 9 conference games. And then you have the majority of their schools only playing 9 Power 4 games, where the Big Ten is playing at least 10.
Right.
And some teams are playing 11. The Big 12 is playing at least 10. And then you have some of the ACC schools playing 10 as well. So the college football should be about competition, putting the best games on the field. But the issue is that the leaderships of the conferences, Ted, are trying to consolidate power. Right. They are making sure that we stay on top instead of doing what's best for college football, which is collectively negotiating their rights and doing everything and doing those things together. But that would create an issue. Because, and mind you, as an Oregon man, I want Oregon to be successful at all times. However, for the health of college football, it is better if at some point in time, Rutgers, Baylor, North Carolina State, that they all have the hope of that they could win a national championship.
I just want to finish with this. What is your kind of ideal non-conference scheduling for Oregon right now? Do you agree with Rob in saying, hey, an FCS game, a regional G6 game, which we talked about, we like Oregon State, and maybe that Big Ten SEC crossover? How would you kind of like to see these 3 games kind of mixed and matched in the future years?
I think that's the perfect way to do it.
Yeah.
as long as there's not a uniform scheduling model, because that's ideal. You're playing 10 Power 4 games, then you
Mm-hmm.
are in a tough conference, and then you're giving an opportunity, a bye game to an FCS
Right.
team, and you're playing a tough group of 5 team, which is Oregon State or, you know, which is either Oregon State or you have Boise State as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how this all plays out. Will this rival, will they find a way to squeeze it into the schedule? You look at the future non-conference schedules for the Ducks and the Beavers, it doesn't exactly look the brightest right now, because Oregon on their schedule 2029 has one spot open, but they already play Portland State and Utah State that year. 2030 looks like it's the next year of full openings, possibility for maybe this rivalry to resume. Oregon State, now, we know there's some flux as to what their conference schedule could look like, but they don't really have a full opening until 2031. George Wrighster from the Unafraid Show and former Duck tight end. Thanks for joining that show out west here today.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Big Ten Ted.
Always great to talk to my main man, George Wrighster. I kind of wanted to give him the floor, but I wanted to finish up with this one thing and kind of my spin and my angle on this Oregon State talking point. I mentioned, 2029 is maybe when you could fit this thing in on the schedule for Oregon. It might even be further than that, to be honest with you. Oregon State, maybe 2030 or 2031. Like, if they don't figure something out, and the adjustment of schedules and maybe canceling, a G6 series for Oregon and Oregon State, fitting this game onto their schedule. If this game goes 4 years, if this game goes 5 years, 6 years down the road, the distance is going to continue to grow. Now, the distance is already growing with these two teams playing yearly on the field, but if they don't play that game for 4 years, for 5 years, for 6 years, the desire every single year that it goes by and it's not played, the desire to get this game back on the schedule is going to kind of drift further and further apart for both of these schools. So if they want to keep this series going, the time might be now for the Ducks and the Beavers. But if they don't want to keep the series going, it kind of might be understandable based on the money that we talked about and the Ducks maybe not wanting to make the trip to Corvallis as often. But maybe they could make a trip to Corvallis once every 3 years, once every 4 years. It's possible. I'm not sure how bright the future is between the green and yellow and the orange and black playing on a yearly basis past this season.